Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are talking about all things retinoids. This is a video I've wanted to do for a while, and I think it's a perfect time because I really think in terms of like trend casting for skincare in 2023, we are going to see a lot of retinols, a lot of retinals, and we're already seeing a bunch of new releases lately. So I want to talk about my own journey with retinoids. I've been using retinoids for about 8 years, so I want to talk about how I started to use retinoids, how I incorporated them into my routines, my experiences with them, and how I've gone up in terms of potency over those 8 years. In 2023, I think the average skincare consumer is more highly educated than they've ever been. There's so much skincare knowledge, skincare information, but I do think retinoids remains one of those categories that's a little bit intimidating for a lot of people. And understandably so, because I think there's a lot of mythology around retinoids burning your face off and just being extremely potent. And there are lots of ways that you can avoid that happening if you learn about the product, the ingredient, and how to incorporate it into your routine. So for a little bit of context, in terms of my skin, I'm 32. My main skincare concerns right now are pigmentation. So when I have breakouts, which I don't have very often, there are oftentimes cystic spots that leave dark pigmentation behind. I actually have a spot right here. I'm wearing makeup, so you might not be able to see it. But those are like those deep spots that stick around for a while. And I only get maybe a couple of cystic spots a year, but the scarring and the pigmentation lasts for a long time. So I'm always concerned about brightening the skin. I do have generally sort of sensitive skin, and at this point in my life, I am focused on taking care of my skin and aging gracefully. By now, we're all aware of the critiques around the term anti-aging. I think we live in a society that very much fears aging and reviles it, especially if you are a woman or a femme-presenting person. And I also don't think you owe well aging to anybody. And I know that well aging has been posited as an alternative to anti-aging, but I don't resonate with that either. So all I can say is I just want to age gracefully and embrace it and take care of my skin and have healthy skin. When I started my retinoid journey in maybe 2014 or 2015, I was much more acne prone at the time and a lot oilier back then. My skin has normalized over time, but I was getting a lot more frequent breakouts, more whiteheads, clogged pores, that sort of thing. So my skin has changed over time, and I do think retinoids are a big part of that. So let's talk about what retinoids are. I have to say I am not a doctor, I'm not a dermatologist, and I'm not a cosmetic chemist. I'm merely a beauty enthusiast, so I'm sharing my experience with you, but please do defer to the professionals in your life. So retinoids are essentially vitamin A or retinoic acid, products that contain retinoic acid. It takes a few different forms. The one you've probably heard the most is retinol, and retinol is a good place to start. And for our intents and purposes, it's the least potent of the products we're going to talk about. That's because it has to go through a conversion. Your body has to change it from retinol to retinal or retinaldehyde in order for it to be used or recognizable by the skin. The next step up is retinal, and that is retinaldehyde, which I just talked about. So it's a little bit more potent because it doesn't have to go through that conversion process. It's already bioavailable for your skin. And the highest step in terms of potency is your Retin-A, your Tretinoin. These are in the US prescription strength retinols. I don't think the average person needs to know about the conversions. Just for our intents and purposes, you should know that there's retinols, which are lower in potency, than retinals, which are higher in potency. And within retinols and retinals, you have several different concentrations in terms of percentage and ingredient potency. The reason why anti-aging is so closely associated with retinoids is that retinoids are one of the few ingredients that has really truly proven clinically backed results in terms of improving the skin texture, boosting collagen, and improving skin turnover. And that's its primary function. So your skin turns over more quickly, so you're getting that like fresh skin come to the surface a little bit more quickly. And that's why it helps with skin issues like fading pigmentation, with treating acne, with creating the appearance of smoother, more radiant skin. So let's get into the nitty-gritty and talk about all of the products that I used. So I mentioned in 2014 and 2015, my skin was much more acne prone and oily. So I was using BHAs, and I would say I had a pretty balanced skincare routine at that point. But I was definitely feeling like I was looking for a better way to treat my acne, especially in terms of cystic acne. Salicylic acid, or BHAs, are great for treating oiliness, for treating breakouts. But when it came to my cystic acne, I was looking for something a little bit more potent. And I also was really curious about retinoids. So the first retinoids I used were from the Skin Medica Retinol Complex line, and they were recommended to me by my sister-in-law, who's a licensed esthetician. And I was really glad I started there, although Skin Medica retinols are at a higher price point, because it's a brand that does retinols seriously. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of research behind their products, and also they have retinols of many different strengths within the retinol complex line. So I started at a low potency retinol, which is 0.25%. When I first started incorporating the retinols into my routine, I made a lot of rookie mistakes. So this is a do as I say, not do as I do. I was on holiday vacation, so it was like December 2015, I think, 2014, and I was in a very cold climate. I had gone to the Grand Canyon and it was snowy and I was traveling. So my skin was already dehydrated and in very extreme temperatures. And I randomly decided to incorporate the product while I was traveling. I think I got it while I was traveling. And the next morning I woke up and my face was extremely sensitive, red, peeling, very raw, and it was incredibly painful. I had to stop using all of my skincare. I could only use a very basic moisturizer and essentially Aquaphor, but I was still traveling and my skin was really raw and in a lot of pain, couldn't wear any makeup. So that was a big lesson to me, not to mess around, especially if you have sensitive skin like I do. It was just a dumb mistake. So once I got home and I started reincorporating the retinol, I was like, okay, I'm gonna follow all of the rules. And there are definitely things you can do. The first is to incorporate it into your routine very, very slowly. So low and slow, low concentration, incorporating it slowly into your routine. I would actually recommend starting to use it maybe 1 to 2 times a week. That way your skin has enough time between uses to start to get used to it, and also just to give your skin a break between applications. The next thing I would say is to apply your retinol to dry skin. And this is a piece of advice that's given a lot by dermatologists, especially when they're prescribing Retin-A or Tretinoin, because your skin, when it's wet, can be a little bit more sensitized to the ingredient. So I actually, even now, do this where I will do my skincare routine, I'll apply my serums, I avoid all other actives, and I apply my moisturizer and wait for it to sink in. And once it has fully sunken in, then I'll apply my retinol over it. So basically what you're doing is you're providing a buffer between the retinol and your skin of soothing or calming ingredients. And this works really well with very plain, basic, non-active routines. I like to use moisturizers with a lot of ceramides to help buffer the retinol. Another method you could use is the sandwich method, which is basically to cleanse, apply moisturizer, wait for it to sink in, do your retinol, and then apply moisturizer again on top of that. So you're sandwiching your retinol between 2 layers of a rich moisturizer. And that's just another way of essentially buffering the effects of the retinol. This won't decrease the potency of the retinol. Your skin will still be able to reap the benefits of the ingredient, but you're able to support your skin barrier through those skin barrier supporting ingredients like ceramides, like shea butters, your emollients, the things that really help keep in moisture and keep your skin barrier strong. The reason why I loved the Skin Medica line to start my retinoid journey me is that the formula itself is a lotion consistency that already contains those barrier boosting ingredients. So it already feels lotiony, it's moisturizing on its own. So you don't even necessarily need more on top of that. I think it's better than a retinol that comes in a serum form because oftentimes you need to add other ingredients to buffer the retinol, whereas the Skin Medica formula already has those ingredients in that one formula. I used the Skin Medica line for I think 2 years or so, and once I emptied the 0.25 bottle, I had already been using it for maybe 6 months or so, 2 to 3 times a week. And then I went up in percentage to 0.5 and then to 1%. And it was a great way to be able to go up in potency without having to switch formulas and figure out a new skincare routine for a different potency for a different product. It was the same formula, just with different strengths of retinol. I am really careful because I think with retinol use, there's often a race to the top mentality of getting to the highest potency, and that's where you're gonna see the best results, and that's the best way to do it. And that's not necessarily true. I think there's a real balance of reaping the benefits of an ingredient like retinol without damaging your skin barrier, because ultimately if you're damaging your skin barrier, it's very counterproductive to using retinol. So you want to find that balance for yourself and your skin type. And I think the more important thing rather than potency is consistency. And if that means you're using a lower percentage retinol more consistently over years throughout your life, that's a lot better than, going to a really high retinol, wrecking your skin, having to heal your skin, and doing it all over again. So within this time period, I did try a few other low percentage retinols that I do totally recommend. One of them is the Jordan Samuel retinol oil. So this is interesting because it's a low percentage retinol. I think it's 0.25 maybe, but it's housed in a facial oil. So you can apply it as your last step, and that emollients of the oil really helps mitigate some of the potentially irritating effects of retinol. I've actually talked to Jordan about this, and he talks about it a lot on his socials, that he could never tolerate high percentage retinols, and so he formulated this with his own skin in mind to create a retinol product that he could use consistently over time. Another low percentage retinol that I really like is the Stratia Night Shift. So this contains 0.15% retinol, and it's encapsulated retinol, and it's housed in a really beautiful, rich night cream texture. So it really is one of those like all-in-one PM routine products, and I've used it, Sean's used it. You just cleanse your skin and dry your skin and apply that, and that's it. It's a great one and done, easy step, and a great starter retinol. Once I was using 1% retinol, which is on the higher end of retinol potency, I started flirting with different brands a little bit. And another brand that makes some of my favorite retinols is Paulas Choice. I really trust the brand when it comes to active ingredients. They really know what they're doing, and there are quite a few retinols in their range. The ones I've tried are the 1% retinol booster and the 1% clinical retinol. The 1% retinol booster is nice if you already have a robust skincare routine, if you have moisturizers you love, hydrating serums you love. Because it's a serum texture, if you have these other supportive ingredients in your routine, it's nice to just slide that in. And it is a gel serum texture. It's very thin, and I didn't have any irritation, any sensitivity with that. Their other retinol, their clinical 1% retinol treatment, I think it's called, is a bit more of a robust, well-rounded formula. So this is a lotion consistency that contains vitamin C derivatives, I think. I don't think it's L-ascorbic acid. And it also contains peptides, which also help with anti-aging. Because this is a robust formula, it's a great one and done formula, and I would use that in the evenings. Actually, I always use retinols in the evenings, and I make sure that I'm being very diligent with my SPF when I'm using retinols, because it can sensitize your skin, and also your skin is going through turnover, and you don't want to be damaging that new skin that's coming to the surface. The next phase, I would say, of my retinoid journey was getting into retinols. And at this point, I was geeking out a little bit more on skincare, and I had heard such amazing things about Medicate's Crystal Retinol line. And when I first started using this, maybe in 2016 or 17, They were one of the few brands that were doing retinol in a really serious, robust way. So their Crystal Retinol line uses retinaldehydes, which I mentioned are a more potent form of retinoic acid, and they also have multiple strengths. So I think it goes like 1, 3, 6, 10, and maybe 20. They even have strengths that are not in their crystal retinol range, but in their other range that are stronger than that. So I actually started at crystal retinol 3, which is 0.03% retinol, I think. I completely recommend the crystal retinol range because much like the Skin Medica range, it gives you a system of advancing in potency while using the same formula. And the formula itself is lotiony, it's easy to use, it's easy to slide into your existing routine, or you can be a one and done in your PM routine as well. I do think you might want another moisturizer with crystal retinol, at least I did, but you don't necessarily need it. I actually had no irritation when I was using the crystal retinol range. I was able to go from retinol to retinal without any retinization, basically. And I think it's because I knew how to incorporate it into my routine at that point. Every time I was going up a potency, I would use it less frequently. So say I was using Medicate Crystal Retinol 3 times a week. If I were going up to Crystal Retinol 6, the next step up, I would scale it back to 1 to 2 times a week, let my skin acclimate, and then go up to 2 to 3 times a week. There are a few other retinols that I love. So one is Allies of Skin, their retinol and peptides night treatment. That one is beautifully formulated. It's a night cream texture. It's rich, it's buttery. I don't know the exact percentage, but I don't think it's super high. I want to say maybe 0.25%. And the other one I love is Saatchi Skin's ursolic acid and retinol treatment, or retinol reform, I think it's called. That one is a 0.15% retinol strength, so on the slightly lower end of retinol potency. But again, there are tons of retinol products that are coming out on the market this year or recently. The Youth to the People retinol just came out at the end of last year. I really think brands are catching on to the fact that people understand that retinol is stronger than retinol and that there's a desire and a demand for it because we have such an educated consumer base now that we didn't have before, even, 5, 6, 7 years ago. The biggest leap in my retinoid journey was moving from over-the-counter retinols and retinals to prescription strength tretinoin. And it was a big leap for me. It surprised even me as a relatively experienced retinoid user at that point, or by that point, because it really did irritate my skin. So I started with a 0.25% prescription strength tretinoin. Again, I live in the US, so I was only able to get it via prescription. And I thought I was very well equipped to take this on, but I was surprised that I did feel a notable amount of tingling the first few times I applied prescription strength tretinoin. And I only applied it maybe 1 to 2 times a week, probably once a week actually, for the first month or two because I was freaked out by my past experiences about potentially wrecking my skin barrier. It took me like a year to go through that first tube of prescription strength tretinoin because I was very cautious and very careful. And once I backed off, I incorporated it slowly. It really wasn't a problem. I didn't ever have a moment of like total disaster. I did have some flaking and peeling, and I have also since then gone up in strength to 0.05 tretinoin, and I noticed some peeling and some flakiness then as well. It wasn't painful at all, but as the skin was turning over more quickly, I had flaky skin for the first time in my life. And occasionally this still does happen if it's, for example, wintertime or I'm traveling. I noticed that when I use this potency of tretinoin, there is a risk of potentially like flaking skin. One thing that people fear a lot with retinoids is what they call the purge or the purging phase. Generally, this happens more to acne-prone skin types. So your skin is turning over more quickly, and basically all of the underlying, blackheads, oils, sebum, all of that is coming to the surface. And so your skin your breakouts might get worse purge before they get better. I think I only really experienced that when I switched over to Tretinoin, and even then, because I was using it so infrequently, like 1 to 2 times a week, I wasn't getting any sort of really dramatic purges. If anything, I would have maybe a couple more cystic breakouts than I typically would. Of course, everyone's skin type is really different, but I never went through that, and I do think it's because I was incorporating retinols and new potencies at a low and slow rate. I'm really happy with where my skin is today. I can't say all of the changes in my skin have been because of retinols, because I use a lot of different ingredients. I use vitamin C, I use BHA, I use non-active ingredients, but I do think there is a correlation. So overall, I'm a lot less oily, and that might also have to do with age, but I do think it has to do with retinoid use as well. I'm a lot less acne prone, especially when it comes to surface breakouts. I don't really get those like whitehead sort of breakouts anymore these days. And again, that could be because of age, but I also think there's a correlation with retinoid use. I do, like I mentioned, get cystic spots occasionally. That's just inevitable. And I do get the pigmentation, but I have really found that retinoid use in conjunction with vitamin C and other brighteners like kojic acid or azelaic acid, those products in conjunction with each other have really helped break up pigmentation on my skin much more quickly than any one of those ingredients alone. And I'm really happy with where my skin is at 32. I am obviously going to age. You know, I think throughout your 30s, you start to see, deeper set wrinkles, maybe start to take form. All of those things are going to happen. That's just human. I think it's actually beautiful to see a face age and change over time. But I'm really happy that I do have a healthy and well-rounded skincare routine in place, and that I did start using my retinoids in my 20s, so that by the time I got to my 30s, I really knew my skin and knew how to use these ingredients. So I think that covers the bases when it comes to my retinoid journey, the products and product lines I've really enjoyed, and tips and tricks for incorporating retinoids into my routines, as well as going up in potency. I've also tried a lot of other retinol products that I did not mention here, so if you have any specific questions, product questions, let me know in the comments below. Again, I can only speak through the filter of my own experience, but I do think there are some really practical tips and tricks that apply to anyone of any age with any skin concern. The main thing I want to reiterate is that it's not a race to the top in terms of potency, and that I hope you enjoy the process of getting to know your skin. And I also hope that you take really good care of your skin barrier. That comes first, before your actives, before your retinoids, all of that. The most important thing is the health of your skin. So if you have any comments, I'll meet you in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!